Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of Talk Openly. My name is Jack, and I am here with my wonderful Sangha friend, Daniel from Lions Road Dharma Center. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Jack. It's so good to be back with you.
It's really good to be back with you, too. I missed you last week.
I missed you as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
yeah. It was kind of weird having just like a night off.
Yeah, what are you gonna do with yourself? What did you
I,
do with
what
yourself?
did I do? I mean, I probably just like wasted no, I don't want to say wasted the time away, but a little bit. I think I'm a bodhisattva in training, and so I'm not always the best I don't always use my time as well as I could. I think maybe
Huh.
I did some Manjushri practice, but I can't remember. That would have been a good use of my time. I hope
Yeah,
what I
that would
did.
have been a good use of your time. Probably, nothing wrong with maybe catching a show, reading a good book, laying around.
No, you're so nice. That's
Those are
like I
those are good
forget.
things too. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about that in a minute, but I want to
Yeah.
let people know, tonight's show is facing our fears. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our fears, and how they come about and what might be some of the underpinnings, the samsaric underpinnings for our fears.
Oh, I'm a
So
little nervous, Jack.
I am too, and it just feels like we keep picking ones that are like too close to home.
I know,
Right
right?
now.
Doubt, apathy, boredom.
Yeah, yeah, we're kind of like we're in our shadow side the
We are
last
totally in the shadow
few weeks.
side. It's true. It's true.
It's good. It's necessary, right?
Yeah, we got to get in there. We got to turn the bright light on, look at it, face our fears, so to speak, face our shadows and transform them.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to be doing that tonight, talking together about those fears. But first, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're doing, how's your training, um, and just, yeah, how you are.
Thanks, Jack. I'm good. My last week I was gone. I went on a work trip with my business partner, who happens to be my brother as well.
Very
So
good.
that was really nice. The during the week I noticed that when I'm traveling and I'm engaged with other people in the last two cases with each of my brothers, that I'm Man, my seated meditation formal practice is totally off. Like it's so far gone.
Yeah.
Um, but on the trip, I had the opportunity while flying out there. I had a little bit of time, and I decided to read the book called Becoming a Buddha,
Hmm.
Mahamudra Dzogchen Foundational Practices by Lama Jimpa Rinpoche.
Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah, I've been meaning to read it ever since I got it, right? And I'd made a little bit of progress, but I never actually sat down. And it's not a heavy read or anything, but there was something in there I wanted to share with you. I'm gonna read a little bit out of it
Okay,
because
wonderful.
this kind of got me, and I think it
Uh-huh.
might be sort of related to some of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah.
All right. So he says, as bodhisattvas, we wear ourselves out because we all have terminal uniqueness. And we wear ourselves out because the nature of the mind is we have delusions. But look at it this way, it's taken eons, but now we're here. And this is the part that got me. We're not a salvation religion. There's no way to rescue people. The door opens from the inside. So we're not aggressive or claim to be omnipotent in that way. And here we go. Here we go. This is it. This is a grown-up religion. This is grown-up spirituality. We're not kids anymore. And he says a teacher
Wow.
can't intervene like, okay, I'm going to intervene and rescue someone from their karma, but we can provide a lot of support around it. I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that support, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my experiences with religion were childish.
Yeah, me
you
too.
know and one of the problems is that I've carried childish religious notions into this practice, and
Yeah.
I've projected my own religious trauma, my own sort of ideas, beliefs about what it's all about, where it wasn't based on any truth. right? Like it was just something like that I had made up, and like I said, I'd projected onto it. And
Mhm.
so, coming to terms with the fact that this is in fact not a salvation religion, no one's coming to rescue me, that I do in fact have the ability to to liberate myself, that just like everyone does, right? It's not because I'm something special, but if I follow these instructions, I can get there. And
Yeah, yeah,
if I have the right support, and that's what's so beautiful, right? We have the support of our teacher, we have Buddha Dharma Sangha, and
yeah.
that's a lot to work with.
That's a lot to work with. Yeah, yeah. So you're noticing like the childish tendencies, which are maybe, I imagine, like wanting someone to come in and do it for us, like wanting
Oh my
someone to
gosh. I remember
rescue
when I was
us.
reading this book, there's this part right around there where I remember being at a meditation session with Lama there. And oh, it wasn't even a meditation session. I think it might have been like a recovery group. I remember expressing my frustration that I was like, what I want is for someone to, like, I don't want to do any of this. I
Yeah,
just want someone to Shanghai me, like just drop in, you know, do the thing and then leave.
yeah,
And I'll be all better.
yeah, yeah,
And I remember the look on his face as I said that to him. I was like, "Come on, man, please do it." And he
yeah,
explains
yeah.
in the book like that's not how this is gonna work.
Not how it works. Yep.
That isn't how it
No.
works. And so, what's funny about it is that, no one ever has lied to me about any of this, right? I think I've shared a number of times actually, like how one time our friend Dirk, right after one of the lunar practices, he took me aside and he was like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know, like, there's no magic here and it's not going to get you high." And so yeah, yeah, like, he like
Pop the
totally
balloon.
popped that balloon. And I remember being all knowing and being like, "Oh yeah, yeah, there's like a
Yeah,
little wink."
you're playing like some mind games here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You don't mean that. You don't mean that, do you? And so what's funny is that it doesn't matter. Like there are some things that are self-secret, so to speak, in the sense that it doesn't matter how much I might say that I like intellectually know something or how much, someone has talked to me. There's some weird thing like where I still sort of am carrying my own beliefs into the whole situation,
Yeah,
right? There
yeah,
are still obscurations, clearly.
yeah,
And so that part's I think that represents the stage I'm at right now, is that there's a sort of abandoning of the scaffolding of beliefs and projections that got me here, and some they're not cold hard truths. They're just plain hard truths.
yeah, plain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I'm glad that you shared that with us. And I imagine a little bit scary. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
letting go of scaffolding, even when you're ready, like let it like taking the training wheels off of a bike, right? Like, even though you're ready, it's still kind of like, but am I?
Right, right. There's that doubt, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. All these sort of like defense mechanisms, I think, pop up around that. And it's really important, like as we'll talk about tonight, and as we discuss facing our fears, it's really important as we, confront these sort of the shadow side, the part that we're not so conscious of. I don't know. I think it's really important to have like a lot of tenderness and compassion towards ourselves along this way. It's
yeah,
easy to be hard,
yeah, it
and
is. Yeah,
judgmental, right? Yeah.
for sure. Well, and it's like each of those parts of ourselves, like if we're going to think kind of psychologically about it, like all of those parts of ourselves are responses that are trying to keep us safe. They've
Yeah.
developed because they're concerned for us. And so, this maybe this doubting voice is like concerned that, hey, are you actually going to be able to do this?
Right.
It's trying to keep you safe, but in a not very helpful way. It's like it's no longer helping to have that doubt.
Yep.
Doubt is a little, maybe that's a little bit of a scaffolding too. It's like,
Oh, that's what I mean. I
yeah,
agree. I think so too. Yeah.
yeah, huh, really
Yeah.
cool. Nice work.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what's going on with me. I was thankfully I've kicked up my meditation practice again after coming back from my work trip.
Cool.
And this morning I had nice success I want to tell you about.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I oftentimes go to the gym in the mornings with my kid.
Mhm.
But so I've messed up my foot and my leg sometime. Like I think it was back when I went to Spain.
Yeah.
Long story short, it was like some kind of weird plantar fasciitis type of thing where like I was hobbled and and I was so tight and was like compensating in all kinds of ways and it
Yeah.
was depressing. It was a mood killer, really, truly.
Mhm.
And then this morning I didn't go to the gym with my kid. Instead, I did yoga with my partner.
Mm.
Um, and oh my gosh, like the relief is so great. And like
Wow.
yeah, I can feel how much the stretching really helped with the pain. It's really amazing. Like I was just tickled to see that the physical yoga, like it was nice from a meditative standpoint too, but it
Yeah.
totally, it immediately started relieving the pain.
Yeah. It works. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It really
Yeah.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, so all kinds of good things going on there on my end. And now I want to switch it back to you and I want to hear about you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've had an interesting time kind of mentally the last couple weeks. I've been, I guess I would say, depressed. Um and I kind of just go through phases of that. Each time though, I'm a little bit like, "Hey, wait a minute." I thought I was done with this, you know?
Yep.
Um But so it's been interesting. A lot of my experience of depression this time around is pretty physical, like just feeling very tired. Um, uh, yeah, also wanting to eat a lot, like
Mhm.
overeating. And so what I've been doing is just giving in to those impulses while being aware of that I'm doing that.
Mhm.
Because I think what's happened for me in the past is that I'm not aware. And so then it kind of becomes a pattern, it gets out of control. Um, but right now I'm kind of like, no, I'm gonna sleep 9 hours, and I'm also gonna have like an extra little dessert because
Yeah.
that's what's feeling kind of like
Hmm.
stabilizing right now. Um, and so that's been interesting, just have a little bit more awareness around it. Um, yeah, I was trying St. John's wort for a while and then I stopped. I didn't really think it had much of an effect, but then the day that I stopped it, man, my brain was like, I was totally just like zoned out. It was weird. So something going on with the serotonins, or maybe.
Is that what does St. John's wort do?
Yeah, yeah, it's a kind of a natural SSRI. Um,
Hmm.
so at least I think.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it, but so yeah, it's been an interesting time, and I am very committed to maintaining my training, um, because I know that if I didn't, that would be dangerous territory. Like I might actually, um, slip in ways that are not sustainable. So I've
Right.
been keeping up with my routine. 24 minutes a day. I'll do some reading. Sometimes I'll do manjushri practice. And there's a different type of uh, experience in meditation when I'm just okay with being depressed.
Yeah.
There's less resistance, and more compassion. And so I think, every time that I become depressed, I'm hoping that I learn a little bit more about how to accept and welcome the visitor of depression, and have it sit down for tea, get to know
Yeah.
it more each time.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at, and just maintaining.
Kind of sounds like you already are inviting it in for some tea.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's this,
and dessert.
yeah, some dessert. Yeah. Yeah, there's this sort of, it's interesting when depression shows up, and you're sort of mindfully aware of it, how there's this sort of, I don't know, it's almost like it's just like an isness. It just is that way, right? Like sometimes like you just sort of like there's this tender, soft sort of heart around it, and
Yeah.
you recognize like, yeah, yeah, this too, this is it. This is part of this experience, right? And
Mm.
somehow that softening, it's not like a magic thing that makes it go away or anything like that, right? But
Yeah.
it does somehow soften it. It does somehow make it a little bit less heavy and
Hmm.
concrete.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I'm
Yeah, I
sorry
think,
that you're experiencing that nonetheless.
thank
I
you.
want you
Yeah,
to feel great happiness.
I know you do. And I appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that I'm wanting to work on when I'm depressed is my irritability, because my I
Hmm.
get a lot more irritable when I'm depressed, and I recognize that that's like it's not helping, it's not helping my relationships, and therefore isn't helping me. And so I just want to be able to catch it a little bit.
Yeah.
um, so I am working with that. Something that I try to do is just it's just when I notice something, like because I can notice, and I don't know if it's the same way for you, but like now I can recognize like when I'm having feeling the urge to kind of like snap or just be a little bit like, I don't know, just, yeah, irritable with someone. i
Yeah.
can I can sense it, and so sometimes I still say the thing, but sometimes I also just don't.
Yeah.
And usually that, well, that is the better option. I can't say that I've had a great experience when I've been sarcastic and rude to someone that I care
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
um so yeah, sarcasm is such like a it feels like such a companion
Oh
um
yeah, for
with
sure.
depression, that it just makes me feel icky.
Yeah, it's like we want our communication just to be clear and simple, especially in those times.
Hmm.
It's okay to flourish and get excited and all of that in other times, like if you're coming from a positive or even a neutral state. But like I think that when we're somehow low energy, depressed, anxious, that type of thing, it's usually best just to keep it pretty simple,
Yeah,
basic.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
hard to do though. Good friend of mine taught me this the notion of resourcing. And it sounds to me like that's something that you're doing around this depression, right? Like you're doing some resourcing
Yeah.
in order to make sure that you have the energy and the support, physical and otherwise, around you to sort of weather that storm.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
resourcing.
That was you, by the way.
I
Just
know. I'm trying to forget. Well, and that was, I remember, there's so much that we can work with the Dharma teachings that we've been given, that it almost feels like, gosh, I don't even know where to start. But I think just starting somewhere. Like I was reminded today, I had a little break, and so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do some meditation rather than, scroll on my phone, which is only going to contribute to or make worse how I'm feeling. Like just sit here and listen to this Lam Rim meditation,
yeah,
the Tupten Chodron guided meditations. And that was such a nice corrective where it was like, I can use this time to work on my mind, and the one that I listened to was the Four Noble Truths. And so it's just, we have so many ways that we can reset to compassion. And compassion is like the ultimate resourcing thing, which is, I know when I brought that up, I was talking about Venerable Tenzin Choki and her talk on compassion, and how, we can't actually have, if we're doing genuine compassion, we're not going to burn out, because compassion is resourcing. And so, yeah, that's such a good reminder, that these practices like Tonglen or even the Lamrim, if we're really really engaged with it and trying to learn, it will transform our experience in our minds. It can't not, I think that's the thing
Right.
that I've learned is that like, um, that's their purpose is that they're aiming to, you know, unwork this ego that is really the cause of my troubles. And so, um, as we were saying about the yoga, it works. It really works.
Yeah, speaking of practices that work to do that, did you do the moon, the vows on the full moon?
I did.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Did you?
I did.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
How
an
did it go?
it was really good. I was on the day that I was traveling to New York, and I woke up early, and I had the practice, like the, I don't know what you would call it, this sadhana, or
Mhm.
I don't, yeah, anyway, I had the instructions with me from last
Right.
time, and so I just woke up and did it, and really, really, really enjoyed it. It was very calming. It seems like it had this effect on my nervous system of just sort of like, just chill, just calm. And it was really a pleasant experience. The only bad part was that I broke my fast at the end in the hotel lobby of like a Best Western or whatever. That part was not a great way. If you're gonna fast, it's nice to have something sort of pleasant on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really funny. Did you like realize that you like broke it? Like, was it kind of intentional or were you like, oh my gosh, no, I broke the
No, no,
fast?
I meant like no, no, no,
Oh,
I
I see.
wasn't breaking the fat, intentionally breaking the
In the
fat.
morning.
It was
Yeah.
in the morning, and I was
Yeah,
like,
I
okay, it's
see.
time to have breakfast, and I was like, ah, man, it's like one of those, you know what I mean? There's like the hotel,
Continental breakfast. Yeah.
yeah,
I love that stuff. I have to say, like I can smash on just some basic continental breakfast.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't the highest quality, but
Oh,
it was fine. It was sustenance. It was good.
it was
I
maintenance,
don't want
right?
to besmirch it. It just was a not exactly the way that I had hoped to break the fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
good.
hopefully, I hope that
You did
next
it.
time we'll continue to remind each other when full moons are coming up. I
Okay,
think that's a
yes.
great practice.
I think so too. Yeah, and something it's very yeah, like you were saying, there's such a calming um nature of those precepts. And really grounding during the day where I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing for the day. Um, and it helps me reorient to like every kind of interaction that I'm having
Yeah,
is like is a dharma interaction.
that's right.
Which ideally on any day I'd be thinking that way too, but like this is just such a good
Yeah.
way to kind of I don't know, it feels like really strong training.
Yeah, it does. And it's interesting how subtle changes, even what appear to be minor temporary changes, can have a rather profound effect. For example, normally when I get onto an airplane, even if I bring a book with me, I might read a few pages and then I'll pop on a movie or listen to some music or whatever, and I
Yeah,
entertain myself. But I taken these precepts, including sort of to avoid entertainment.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
so instead I picked up this book by my teacher and learned some things. So yeah, yeah, even small temporary changes can have drastic, profound effects.
Yeah, most definitely. Wow, very cool.
Yeah,
Well, should we do some training of our own right now?
let's do it. Let's do some Lojong.
Lojong. I'm surprised
So,
they don't just say Lam Rim every time. I get them mixed up.
oh yeah, for sure. Well, we are on the RLSG on the LionsRoadDharmaCenter.org website, the random Lojong slogan generator made by our good friend Dirk.
We love it very much. Okay, 54. I feel like I've seen this one before, and it is one that um oh, it's so important. So I'm glad it's back. Train wholeheartedly. So Trala Kyabgyon, which I've got to pick up this book. I'm thinking I need to pick up The Practice of Lojong by
Yeah.
Trala Kyabgyon.
Yep.
Because he's such an incredible writer, and I want to know. I want to read all the Lojong.
Yeah, his commentary is fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. So let's see what he says. A wholehearted commitment is about seeing something through to the end. It's not about making a big splash to see what happens, thinking that all is well and good if things work out, and then moving on to something else if they don't. A total wholehearted commitment doesn't involve sporadic outbursts, but rather a judicious expenditure of energy over the long term. Courage is also an essential element in our practice, and it's far better to overestimate what we want to achieve than to underestimate it. We should never think, I'll just aim small because I only have the capacity to become a slightly better person. Our expectations must be realistic, and we have to fulfill them in a graduated manner, but we should always set our goals high and do what we can without hope or fear.
Ah, that's beautiful.
That's good.
That is such a good reminder.
It's encouraging, right?
Indeed, indeed it is. I would say that's been one thing that I find um quite difficult is my thinking is in fact sort of aiming low close, right? Gets, make something that's attainable. If I'm going to aim at something at all, mostly isn't there's no even aiming going on. And
Yeah,
with these practices, there's, these great aim, like there are these great ambitions and like not a make-believe wholehearted commitment to it, right? Like it is honest God, jump right in and get after it sort of commitment.
yeah,
And yeah, I gotta say that that's challenging at times because there's this
definitely.
part of me that's like, it's never gonna happen. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I worry the same thing. I think this is going to be a great segue into our
Hmm.
discussion tonight. Because yeah, I feel sometimes overwhelmed by the task of the path. And I really appreciate what he says here about, not just making a big splash,
Hmm.
because and like sporadic outbursts and things like that. Um, because I think that in some ways that is how I got into Dharma, was just like a big old splash. Like I'm just gonna dive head first and see what happens. And I'm really glad that I've been able to stick with it. But um, it's encouraging to see that, okay, really what it's all about is that consistent, everyday discipline. Because that just it feels safer. We don't have to make a whole bunch of big splashes.
Hmm.
We can just consistently do our training and trust that what our teachers are telling us is true, that we are going to make it. Like that's just, it's the science of Dharma, is that if you keep doing it, you're going to become a Buddha. Like those are the results. um and so, yeah, doing that without hope or fear. It's interesting to have a goal without hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a cool thing.
No, I love it. And this is sort of speaks to what you were talking about earlier, right? Like even when you're coping with depression and even when you're resourcing in different ways, there's still this commitment. It's still there, right? You don't stop just because it's not a pretty day, or it's not, things aren't exactly the way you wish they were. You still are practicing mindfulness, right? You're still engaged in this entire practice. And I think that that's it, right?
Yeah,
That there's some real joy in that. Even when it's not happiness, there is still that joyful effort, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm really beginning to appreciate that aspect of it.
Me too. It's stable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that moving beyond hope or fear is, maybe that's just through diligent practice through all of our hopes and fears. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of the stable line, and our hopes and our fears go up and down, but we maintain the training regardless. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and exactly that last line about our expectations must be realistic and we have to fulfill them in this graduated manner. Um I think that part is sometimes a little bit tough for me,
Mm,
like I kind of like the more sort of throw things at the wall, make a big splash and see what happens, right? But no, like you said, there's a science, there's a recipe, there's a way to do it, and it's in this graduated manner. And we can be realistic about what we can accomplish. But at the same time, having these big aims, these big goals, these that are just, like super duper high. That's helpful. It's like it's kind of, to me, it's been so surprising to see how aiming high does in fact work to guide you, as you move through the days.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, it's so cool. Let's check out. I want to see this
Yeah.
picture. Oh,
What is
wow.
that, a Kala chakra? Is that what that is? No? In the 23 deity Naratma Mandala.
That's
Huh,
really cool.
that is
Two
cool.
people,
I can't see the center there. Hmm.
multi-armed.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that a snake around their neck?
Yeah, looks like it.
Huh.
Very
Very
cool.
cool. Very, very cool. All right. So I'm going to stop the share on that.
Hmm.
All right.
So they were just describing, hopes and fears. And yeah, just how interesting it is that Dharma practice is about moving beyond hope and fear and really, really coming into our bodhisattva in training beings, these these beings that act out of just compassion. Um, and so yeah, I've been thinking about fear quite a bit. It's been and it's interesting. Oftentimes, I've noticed a theme in my darshans, or just in talking with Lama in passing too, is fear. Fear about, not being enough, or fear about my own potential. There's all these different fears. And so I just wanted to talk about it tonight. And because apparently fear is quite a limiter on the path.
Yeah.
It keeps us back. Um, so I'm glad that we're talking about this tonight. I think it's going to be really good for me. And
Yeah. Same. Although I have to say the notion of going beyond hope, I'm sort of afraid of that, right?
yeah.
I have a fear of going beyond hope,
Isn't
right?
that interesting? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
me too. Yeah, because what is like hope, it sounds like a positive. The way that we talk about hope
Mhm.
is that it's like we're moving into a new future, and we can have everything we've ever wanted. It's like very political almost. Right? It's like
Sure.
we can do this. And so to abandon hope, like, why would we do that? Why would we want to abandon hope?
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly there's that hope of the spiritual materialist, hoping to get something out of it. But at the end, as Lama says, we just get emptiness.
Yeah, we just get emptiness. Yeah. So like all the hope, all of the attainment is also just empty.
Just empty.
So yeah, why fixate? And on the flip side, so I guess that means that our fears are also empty of a solid, permanent existence.
Yep, yep. And the more that we get the right view around the fear, the less that they're driving the show. Or
Gosh,
so
I hope
or so
so.
I've heard.
Yeah, right. It's really funny too, like being like in mental health, is that there's a lot of times that I'm having conversations with people where I'm like, oh man, I really got to start like actually doing that.
Exactly.
Because we talk about, fear all the time, and like taking moving towards your values regardless of your fears and things like that. And That's really hard.
It
I
really
really admire
is.
people who come to therapy and talk about that stuff. It's
Yeah.
hard.
It is so hard. It is so hard, and the more that we scratch at the surface, the deeper it goes.
Yeah. Or
You
like,
know?
you know how when you start cleaning like a really dirty
Oh,
room, and then it's like, oh, I just shouldn't have even started because now that one clean spot makes the rest of the place look so nasty.
exactly.
It's
There's
like,
just like it's like you pull at the thread and you just keep pulling at it and pulling at it and pulling at it, and pretty soon you're naked. You've unraveled the
yeah,
whole thing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, my God. Anyway, you've got some fears. I got some fears, right? And they
Yes.
and they they start sort of superficial, but they go deeper and deeper, and they're profoundly, profoundly related to who we think we are, right? To this
Wow.
misperceived self. That's the part, like, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my fears. So this was actually a challenging topic for me.
Uh-huh.
Um, you know, really being like, well, what is it that I'm afraid of? And yeah, maybe there's a few superficial things, but it's interesting that in my practice and in my life, the fears are actually oftentimes the same.
Hmm.
In the sense that there's this sort of like, one of the things that I realize is that I'm terribly afraid of like intimacy, vulnerability, transparency, and that it's deep. They're like deep roots, like crabgrass or something that's gone
Yeah.
way down in there, and it shows up in all these weird ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where like there's this attempt to propagate and to support, to prop up this sort of like notion of who I am. And I don't even realize that I'm not thinking about it, I'm just doing it, right?
Yeah.
And that so much of the way that I'm trying to sort of control the entire narrative about who I am and how I'm relating to other people, that so much of that isn't driven consciously, but instead is the result of a lot of these fears and around the ways that I've tried to cope with them and
Right.
to protect myself from them. That's the development of all kinds of like trauma responses and things like that that are no longer helpful, as you said.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is weird how if we start to look at just some of our everyday thoughts or behaviors, that it is all connected to these like very egocentric beliefs, mine are it's almost embarrassing like
Oh
saying this,
yeah.
right? Because it's like
Yeah.
it feels so vulnerable, but I know that I'm not alone, so I know that like I'm not special in my fears. Like people experience this, and all of us in samsara are experiencing self-centeredness and like ego, like misconstrued self thoughts, right? And
Mhm.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
mine, the ones that come up a lot are that like I'm a failure, um, I'm a bad person, uh, I'm a fraud. Like people are gonna find out, that I'm
Yeah.
not actually a good person.
Right. Oh, if
Like
if
I've
they
been putting up
only
all
knew,
this show,
Jack.
like this
Right.
puppet show of like,
Right.
I'm nice,
Yeah,
but
I'm
underneath
thoughtful
it's
and
like this,
considerate and mindful.
right?
I'm a Buddhist. I love everybody.
But underneath is this like conniving,
Yeah,
like, evil
this
little demon that
seething,
just
angry demon.
and so when I really look at them, even ones that seem to be about other people, like, I have fears about my loved ones suffering or
Yeah,
getting hurt in some way, being harmed. Um, uh, even that is kind of like, well, that's about me. It's because
yeah,
I don't want to suffer that,
yeah,
um, that they're suffering. And so when I really look at it, it's like, oh gosh, all of those fears and anxieties are really just about maintaining this false sense of
yeah.
self.
That's right. There's a
Just
lot of energy
completely,
goes into it,
yeah, just
and it
completely
just
ungrounded. Yeah.
it distorts our sort of communication with the world around us,
Yes.
right? Because it's this layer. this unnecessary layer. We're putting so much energy into distorting it, to meet our needs, to sort of try to protect ourselves from this big scary world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It does feel big and scary, but I think
Yeah.
it feels bigger and scarier um, because of maintaining these beliefs.
It wouldn't be big and scary if it wasn't dualistic.
Ah, say more.
Right? Yeah, I mean, if there was no, if the dualism of the subject object divide wasn't there, it would be impossible to have fear. You couldn't, right? Like in the same sense that you wouldn't be af- like afraid of yourself, so to speak, right? Like if there's we are only worried when we see ourselves as apart from and disconnected from. That is that misperceived self, right? That doesn't see its interconnectedness, its emptiness in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what's so healing about Dharma, right? Is that there it's by perceiving the truth, right? To getting those little glimpses of being in harmony with reality as it is, and how
Mhm.
peaceful that is, and how there's no fear there,
Yeah.
right? The nature of mind that way, it's beyond fear.
Yeah.
And right, so like if you can recognize that dualism is a big problem if you're fearful, right? Think about the Tara. We'd heard it, way back when that when reciting the Tara mantra, it's good to keep in mind that we want people to be free of their fears, and we want the end of this dualistic perception, mind state, and then we want their body minds to be healthy. And all three of those things, they're not separate,
Yeah. 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 Most definitely.
right? The freedom from fear, the lack of dualism, and the healthy body and mind it's all the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And when those come into like alignment, with reality that things are impermanent, I think that that's a huge antidote for me is just
Yeah.
reminding myself like, okay, all of this is changing. And so even if there is something that's painful or
Yeah.
uncomfortable, like it's not a permanent reality.
Yeah,
Uh,
let's look at its dependent origination a little bit, right? Let's see what the causes and conditions were, right? What kind of karma generated this situation, right?
right,
And
right.
then we can allow that thing, that experience of fear, or that thought or concept of fear, can allow it to like self-liberate in the Dharma, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
Like in the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
But we can't, it's weird, right? I know I say this all the time, but it's weird. You can't go in thinking I'm gonna make this go away.
Well, dang it.
No.
Yeah, it's like we just have to be with it. We've got to experience it.
It's
Uh,
like,
never
it's
mind.
kind of like I told my kids when they were little, and I've told myself the same advice, which is if you're ever having a bad dream and some scary monster is chasing you, the best thing you could do is to turn towards it. Like turn
Yeah,
straight towards that thing that's chasing you. Look at it.
yeah,
Be like,
yeah,
what the hell, man? Why are you here? How can I
yeah,
help you? Right? And
yeah,
it's amazing how when we do that, we stop running, we turn, we face, we look at, we invite, we say, all right, I see you. I understand you're here. I'm not trying to push you away. Why? Talk to me,
yeah,
come sit with me for tea,
right,
right? That's how we dissipate these things, right? But not by violently trying to attack it and make it go away, shove it back into the shadows.
right, right.
That's what
Or
I've been doing most of my life, by the way.
yeah, me too. And mine is that my typical pattern is that I avoid. So
Oh,
I'll avoid the things that make me anxious or fearful, which only reinforces that they are something to be scared of,
that's
right?
right. That's right.
And so like one thing that I might work on actually I think I'm gonna try and do an individual retreat just a few days sometime before the end of the year. And I go to the same place every time. It's out on Whidbey Island. It's a little retreat house that was actually built for the Sakya Monastery in Seattle to go do retreat. And so it's a really, powerful space. There's a lot of energy there. But I find that once it gets dark, my fear and anxiety of being alone um really like starts coming up.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is I just close all the windows, I close like, the drapes, I turn all the lights on in the house. And it gives me like slight comfort. But then sometimes even in meditation, I'll be like a little bit amped, kind of
Mm.
listening out for sounds and things like that. And so I think I might have to do some exposure therapy or something like when I'm at the retreat house, is just in meditation, like allow fear to be present. And, where do I feel it? What do I notice? Um, what kinds of thoughts are associated with my fear?
Yeah.
And just really observe it um, and do my best not to like kind of just go immediately to what feels safe, which is like to close everything up and shackle myself inside. Um, so that's something I'm thinking about doing because I know that I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's, more than likely I am going to be fine. But if I can move beyond that hope that I'm going to be fine and also move beyond the fear that I'm going to be hurt and just, experience what it is that I'm experiencing,
Yeah.
I think that could be really powerful. I don't know.
Indeed, I agree with you. You know, one thing that I've sort of played around with when it comes to fear is and noticed that there's some results with is to use visualization techniques and to accelerate it, right? Talk about exposure therapy. Like, really, let's go. Let's you want to Daniel, you want to like latch on to fear right now? You want to be
Yeah.
afraid? Let's do it, right? Not in a mean way, but like, all right, let's sit with that for a minute, right? And let's visualize those very terrible, terrible, terrible things that we're so afraid of. Let's
Yeah.
look at it, right? It can even borderline fantasy. I've done that, for example, I used to be quite afraid of flying, right?
Mm.
And my family flew a lot and I've had to fly quite a lot. And I'm not like, it's not like paranoia or anything. It's just sort of that general fear of flying,
Yeah.
right? And what I noticed is that if I, instead of like getting all tight and tense around it, if before takeoff, if I spend, 10, 20 minutes, however long it takes to do the pre-boarding stuff or whatever,
Mm.
then if I've used that time to visualize like the absolute worst stuff, right? About, I mean, like all the things, right? Oh, crashing, landing gear not coming down, terrorists, all the things,
All the
right?
things.
And I just really let it go, like let
Yeah.
that energy just explode itself.
Yeah.
By the time that we're taking off, I'm totally just like,
Yeah.
just like okay, I'm good. It's all fine. I'm not actually all that afraid of anything.
That's so funny. Yeah, so it sounds like just like taking it to the extreme, almost comical.
Yeah,
It's just
totally.
like so over the top, like, oh, okay, that's really how ridiculous you are right now,
Right,
mind. And like
right. Yeah.
little scared little ego self. And so you kind of just like blow it up and magnify it, make it ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, that I mean, I think that there's a sense of then also it is this a little bit of that exposure therapy, but it's also just again seeing that I don't think I realized this initially, but it's a little bit of that seeing the emptiness of it too, of that
Yeah.
as well, right? So you can sort of provoke it, is all I'm saying. You can make it sort of
Yeah.
make that like kind of fan the flames a little bit so you can see it better,
Yeah.
and then you can see it and you're like, oh. I see the causes and conditions where my mind was creating all kinds of stories, intentionally so, but it was
Yeah.
even so, my mind was creating all kinds of stories that weren't actually happening, and that's how that fear came about. Those are the causes and conditions of the fear. Oh, okay, I see that I've been telling myself all kinds of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now I'm
Yeah. Right.
scared. Of course I'm
Right.
scared.
Of course. That's really great. Yeah, that's a cool tactic. And um yeah, to reflect on emptiness in the scenario of like catastrophic crashing and all the things. It's like, yeah, that's it too. That
Yeah,
emptiness too.
that too.
I can experience nature of mind in any of these scenarios if I'm up for it.
That said, thinking about your retreat, like I think that some, like whatever the fears are, if they're somewhat rooted in reality, like somebody busting in on you when you're all alone or whatever,
Mhm.
I think it makes sense to, you got to have some trust in the fact that you've sort of scouted things out. You've looked under the bed and there's no monsters
Yeah,
there,
there's no
right?
monsters. Yeah. And
Right.
lock the door, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Don't
those are
be silly.
right. But I'm really interested, in like the kind of practices like the charnel ground practices that are talked about,
Mm.
in text, and that kind of approaching fear and experiencing fear. Um, it's just really interesting to me. So I think this might be my own little charnel ground practice.
Good. That's
Just
awesome.
just fear. Yeah, just fear.
Yeah.
Fear and shamatha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I Chogyam Trungpa says, the path to fearlessness begins with fear,
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Damn it.
And so we can be really grateful that we went from a state of not even recognizing our fear or being able to necessarily be able to even name it or yeah, see it. We went from that state to realizing that we had these fears and then even got to the point where we're like looking at and playing with the fears,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then yeah, and then after we engage in these processes, maybe those fears will have transformed into something else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that is going to happen.
Again, if you follow
Learn
this,
that
if,
path.
if you follow the recipe, the formula
Right.
diligently, then yes, indeed.
Right. Well, and I learned about what are called the four fearlessnesses.
The four fearlessnesses.
Fearlessnesses.
Okay,
That's
what
just
what are
very
the
hard to
what are
say.
the four fearlessnesses?
And I'm not familiar with this, and I wonder if it might be like a different um school of Buddhism. It came from the Nichiren library, but we're kind of non-sectarian
Yeah, lay it on.
people.
What are they?
So for Buddhas, there's four fearlessnesses for Buddhas and then also bodhisattvas. And for Buddhas, there's fearlessness in declaring oneself to be enlightened to the truth of all phenomena, in proclaiming oneself to have extinguished all desires and illusions, um, in proclaiming oneself to have elucidated the obstacles to Buddhist practice and enlightenment, and in declaring oneself to have clarified the way of liberation from the world of suffering and thus the way of attaining emancipation. So like real confidence, that
Dang.
you have achieved, enlightenment, that you've extinguished all desires, and that you know the way out for others. And then for
I
bodhisattva,
want that, Jack.
I want that too. Yeah. They're just like, I couldn't care less about, this thing that used to scare me. Like, this is just. So, bodhisattvas are also super rad in that their fearlessness in continually memorizing the teachings and in expounding the meaning of those teachings. So, teaching others, fearlessness in perceiving the people's inherent capacities and in expounding the teachings according to those capacities, and then fearlessness in resolving people's doubts and also answering any questions. And so some of
Oof.
the themes that I noticed were like, okay, so just utmost confidence, right, in the teaching and our teachers, which is
Hmm.
like that's the opposite of doubt, which we were talking about recently,
Right.
right? Where it's like
Yeah.
just fully assured that our teachings and the teachers are going to lead us to enlightenment. And then there's also some elements of like just unwavering care, right? And
Yeah.
compassion for others, which is the opposite of self-centeredness, right? Which is what so many of like these fears that we've been talking about are centered on.
Hmm.
And then also like renunciation, right? There's a lot about, okay, so we're abandoning the eight worldly concerns. They just don't matter anymore. Those are things that actually bring fear into our lives because we're worried about losing the things that we want, right? And so I just found that really kind of potent, where it was like, oh, these are the minds that we're
Yeah.
aspiring to, and that we're actually moving towards, these fearless minds that just are fearless because they know reality, they know compassion fully, and they're just, their whole purpose is to serve others, and to not give an F about the things that don't matter, right? The things that
Yeah.
is chained in fear. It's like those things don't matter. In fact, they're boring. That was actually something that Lama told me, as an antidote in shamatha practice. If I'm like really caught up in fears or anxieties, stress, he was just like, they're boring. They're actually boring. And so tell yourself, like when you're thinking all these anxious thoughts in your meditation, actually that's boring. And I was like, damn it. They
Ooh.
don't feel boring.
Andrew, talk
But
about
isn't that
flipping it
cool?
right on its head.
Like that cool boredom that,
Yeah.
we've talked about in the past, or that who was it that gave that amazing talk on cool boredom? Was that you?
No, no, I didn't give a talk on it. I just planned on giving a talk about
There,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, no, absolutely. That's that cool boredom that Chogyam Trungpa talks about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I want the so Lama's advice, if I can say it, it's to view these mind games, these fears, these distractions as boring. Is that
Yeah.
what he said?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
Huh.
what's funny with that is that it's almost like, those thoughts are bullies, they're just like my mind trying to bully me into whatever self-centeredness to, and so if I can just be like, okay, that's kind of boring. It's a little bit like
Ooh, that sounds
that
potent. I'm gonna try it.
it's the
Yeah.
last thing that a bully wants, is to
Just
just be
you're
insecure,
irrelevant.
right? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like what Dirk said when he was talking about the Mara's last shindig with Buddha before he became enlightened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
how Buddha just says, I see you, Mara.
Yeah.
That's it. Like whatever,
Yeah.
man. Like I see you. It's all
Yeah.
good. And Mara's over there doing all these things, trying to get, stir up some fear, some trouble. Buddha's just like, oh, yeah, I see you.
Yeah.
Yawn.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
just kind of uninteresting.
yeah.
And that's the cool thing about when you're a Buddha, is that it's just genuinely
Yeah.
uninteresting, those things. We might need to fake it till we make it a little bit.
Let's baby step our way to the four fearlessnesses.
Exactly. We're gonna get there. It's gonna happen.
Thanks
Yeah,
for helping me make it happen, Jack.
thank you too. I'm so grateful to have such a good friend
Same.
on the path.
Very
Yeah.
much. Can't wait to see you this weekend.
I know, I know. I'm going to be in Sacramento for retreat. I'm very much looking forward to it. I feel like I'm a guitar that's a little bit out of tune, and retreat just helps me get back
Uh,
in tune.
let's get back in tune, Jack. I love it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, friends. Thank you so much. See
Bye
you on
for now.
Tuesday.
Bye bye.
Bye.